All right, so this is week 3, no production for me, a little lull in the work. Put some time into my garage here, got a little bit more organized. Still got some items against the wall in the back there that I want to get rid of. But I've got finally a booking next week. It's for a client I've worked for in the past. I've actually done the same format in the past, only they added some complexity this time. So it's a sit down interview, but it's kind of like a podcast format on camera. 3 camera shoot, host and a guest. So you get your 2 close ups and a 2 shot. We're not switching this, it'll be an ISO record. I'd actually like to switch it, and there's no reason we couldn't. I would just need to add one additional person to the crew. We're going to have 2 camera operators, a sound person, and then for this one, this is new for this client, we also added 2 teleprompters, 1 prompter operator, but 2 heads, so the 2 close-up angles. And the first question I had for the client-side producer was, well, if it's because this podcast format, like, do you want through the lens broadcast style teleprompters, or do we want to position monitors over the shoulders of each person so that in their respective close-ups, if they're reading off the monitor, the eye line looks like they're actually talking to the other person in the chair? I've done these things both ways, and I just didn't want to get in a situation where I assumed we wanted it one way, and I've done that. We go in, we shoot take one, and then they realize, oh, this is weird having people look down the barrel of the lens reading the prompter, but they're supposed to be having a conversation with somebody else. So I sent that email off, awaiting an answer, and didn't hear back. So I wanted to start teching everything out because it's been a couple months since I've done a multicam shoot with all of this gear. I'm going to build out with 2 21-inch monitors for prompter just to the side of camera, so over the shoulder for each subject. And then for the close-up cams, it'll be the Sony FX9s with the 28 to 135 zooms. And then my 2-shot camera will be the Amira. Thinking soon, I hope to have an FX3. But I don't know in the context like this if I'd actually run the FX3 because it's HDMI, and for this client, I send a quad split feed of the 3 cameras over Zoom feed, actually Teams for this client, Microsoft Teams. So that just mini HDMI, or I don't know, whatever size HDMI is on the FX3, and then I'd have to run an SDI adapter, carry more HDMI cables. I just had nothing but bad experience in the past trying to send HDMI feeds off of cameras. Things get bumped and broken throughout the course of the day. So on the Amira, I'm going to run the 17 to 120 Canon servo zoom. I love this lens. I've got 2 other compact zooms from Canon. They're sitting back in California. I got to go back and collect them. They're not really working much anymore as a consigned rental. But I've got the 15.5 to 47 and the 30 to 105. They're actually a little bit sharper, and they're calibrated with witness marks for cinema style focus pulling, where this servo zoom is more of a broadcast lens. So it's got a greater range, about the same speed. I think it's a T 2.9 versus 2.8, and then it ramps a little past 120. I think it goes down to 3.2 from like 90 to 120, where the 1547 and 3105 are constant aperture. I like the feel and focus throw on the 2 compact cinema zooms too over the E&G lens. I do have a little bit of trouble when I hop between them, like I shoot one job on one, and then it takes me like half a day to relearn how much I got to roll the barrel to pull focus without overshooting and correcting. All right, moving on to the monitors. I have 2 Flanders Scientific BM210. It's their broadcast field monitor. It's not the higher end 10-bit or 12-bit color panel that DITs use on set to do quick grades. But for a field monitor, they're excellent. Mine are older. I think my first one's from 2012, and the second one I think is 2014. They are slightly different. Same panel, but just different vintage or manufacturing run. And they've both been back to Flanders, the factory, or the lab, I guess, here in the U.S. for calibration. And one, I think the power supply went out on it once. But they've been really good. I mean, I guess I'm coming up on 10 years. They're I find too, as a owner op, I always charge extra for big monitors. So, nowadays in my package rate, single camera shoot days, I'll include my little 7-inch. It's just a free world daylight viewable. I really like the picture off it for the money, but I don't charge for that monitor. And then if they want something bigger, the Flanders, that's an add-on rental. They live in the truck, so frequently they won't ask for them, but on the shoot day, they'll ask for more monitors, and that's a nice little upcharge. So for the two teleprompter displays, they're both feeding off a single computer. In this case, it's going to be a Chromebook. It's a unit that I own, and then I've got just a simple teleprompter app on the Chromebook. I think it's called Teleprompt, Telly, prompt, all one word. Works pretty good. I've, over the years, used and purchased many different prompter apps, DOS, Windows-based, Mac OS, and now I prefer just a Chromebook because generally it's smaller scope shoots that are not live when I'll provide my own prompter equipment. If it's anything more advanced than that, live broadcast, big commercial production, celebrity talent, or pro athletes, then I just refer it out. I find a career teleprompter service to come in and run it all. But kind of while I cable these up, give you the little backstory. So when I was in college in film school, my then girlfriend, now wife, worked at a local ABC affiliate, and she was the evening news teleprompter operator. And that was kind of my first exposure to prompting. And in parallel to that, and kind of the first few years after I got out of college, working on a lot of lower budget productions with the cue cards, a giant marker and poster board, and it's such a nightmare. Like the camera would have to reposition further away so that the eye line doesn't look weird, and then you get all this downtime when they have a script change because a PA or someone's got to write out on a new card. So early on I bought a prompter, just like it was actually like one of those little classified ads in the back of one of the industry magazines. I don't remember, TV technology, maybe videography, but it was this company in Arizona called Ridiculously Low Cost Teleprompters, and it was $999 for I think a guy like out of his garage built these things, but it was like an old school monochrome CRT television that had the fake wood panels for the enclosure, and then it was just bent aluminum, like C-channel aluminum, and then a piece of water white glass with I think it was like 50-50 transmission, so you lost about a stop and a half on it with a metal hood. And those things were great. I used them for years, and it was the same kind of thing. Like any job that was cue cards, I would bring the prompter and be like, hey, I got a prompter. You want to use the prompter? And I get a little upcharge on the day, but more importantly, it would cut the amount of takes and the duration of the shoot day down significantly. Okay, the last time I shot this project, I did not tech the cameras, format, and label cards in advance, and that burned a significant amount of the time during setup that I would have preferred to have had to dial in the lighting and finesse the angles a bit more. So I'm going to get them fully teched and ready in the truck, cased, ready to power up and frame on the day. One of the challenges I've got at this location is we only get 2 hours to load in and set up, and it's downtown in the city, so I'm going to burn 30 minutes just getting all the cases out of the van and into the building. Fortunately, it's ground level, and I can park the truck about 150 feet from where we're working. So the record specs for this show are UHD resolution, the AVC-L codec, and then it's the Cinetone, basically baked in color. So Cinetone in the case of the FX9s, and then 29.97 as a frame rate. So I'm going to start out with the sensors cropped in at the 5K scan rate, so it's a little bit less than full frame. And that was because I believe last time with the 28 to 135 zooms, I didn't quite have enough reach on the telephoto side for a clean close-up of each person. I think 5K covered it, so I'll start there, and then if we need to step down to 4K Super 35 area, we can do that on the day. The Amiras are starting to show their age. I kind of wish they had a more of a corporate and TV news friendly codec than ProRes. ProRes files, particularly in UHD mode, are quite large. The cards fill up fast, and I really can't. And on this shoot specifically, I'm not going to be able to download on the day because we got to get out of that location. So I'll have to offload off-site and then make FedEx. The Amira does shoot the older Sony. It's not AVC, XD-Cam 50 megabit, but it only does it in 1080 mode. So I'm gonna just do ProRes 422 for this show in UHD resolution for the record. Project settings, same 29.97. And it's so refreshing going back to the Arri menus. It's so much faster, and the flow of the settings is just more intuitive than clunky Sony menus. I found with baked in color, particularly for live switch events, the Amira default Rec 709 LUT is still a little bit too low contrast, like lifted gammas, I guess. It's more set up to be graded a bit later. And Arri has another LUT called Vivid that looks pretty good, and it's a close match to the FX9s. I've used it several times now, and it cuts fine. It looks great. I've learned the most important thing to do mixing different cameras, and even when they're the same model, is do not trust the numerical values for white balance. Like, don't set 5600 zero tint on all your cameras and expect them all to look the same. It's better to line all your cameras up on your key light source, same or similar angle to a white card, and run an auto white balance. And I've found with the Arri cameras more, even with the Sonys, and different lenses skew the color temp a bit as well. But so I'll do that on the shoot on the day, is white balance them all the same. And then at least it's like all my whites are the same, and then the tint will help align all my skin tones and wardrobe. Like, I've found mixing Sony and Canon cameras is more difficult, particularly with the shades of blue and green for wardrobe. All right, I got the prompter set up. I had to unflip in the software, so it was defaulted from the last shoot to go through a mirror and horizontally flip the text. But I get going in both directions. Now, my setup here, everything's compressed in a lot closer. The cameras and the monitor will back away on the actual day. The thing that gives me the most trouble on these projects is the video feed to a remote client, remote producer. They want that thing up first so they can help dial in the shots, but it's kind of in the chain of events of setting things up. It sort of needs to happen last. It's like I want to get cameras placed, get all my BNCs run, and then get the laptop going. As I mentioned earlier, this one is going to be via Microsoft Teams, and I have so much trouble. I think it's the OS X or Mac OS now. What are we on? OS 12. The Mac implementation of Microsoft Teams is not very stable. It doesn't like external cameras. It works great with the internal webcam. So I've got my Blackmagic, I think Ultra Studio Mini SDI to USB or Thunderbolt, which is my default go-to. Works perfect in Zoom. And then I've got it's not Magwell, it's some other brand webcam interface that doesn't require drivers. But unfortunately, the one I have is HDMI based. I actually bought it for a specific shoot where I needed to send PowerPoint slides off a presenter's personal computer. So the thing with this Teams app is the first time I tried it, I just direct patched one camera SDI into my Blackmagic box, opened up Teams, I'm running the current version, and I was able to switch from the internal webcam to Blackmagic. Worked perfect. Set up my quad split box, tried again, and it hard crashes my Mac. I get like the black screen with text that says you got to press any key to reboot, something bad happened, and it did that to me several times. So I switched over to the webcam HDMI unit, and I had a little trouble with all my signal routing here, getting it going, so I got out the little 7-inch monitor to test it. Now, I switched over to Zoom. Everything works perfect. Blackmagic and the webcam interface every single time. I can switch picture and sound. But Teams is like, I don't know. It's like it only works like 1 in 3 attempts, and each time I have to do a full reboot. Heard back from the client-side producer, and I guessed wrong. They want through the lens teleprompting. So I own two 15-inch commercial-grade prompters. Same panel. My panels are from Jim in Orange, California. Pick Flip, which is Greenberg teleprompting. They're sunlight viewable. You can get them with SDI in. Mine are just HDMI and old school composite standard def, and I tend to just run them in standard def. But unfortunately, one of my prompters is in California, and I have the other one with me here in Texas. So for this shoot, I'm going to use a inexpensive Amazon prompter that I bought. It's a 10-inch, and it's really intended for like a permanent setup for like a vlogger or the what do you call the gamers that do the streaming, like the Twitch stream type of thing. It's kind of flimsy, and it's the FX9's a little big for it, but I'm going to make it work for this shoot. So here I'm putting together my big Q Gear 15-inch broadcast unit. They don't make this model anymore, but there's a newer version that allows you to adjust the ride height of the camera. You can see on this one, it's a fixed height above the tripod head. The disadvantage to that is you need a heavier duty fluid head with more counterbalance because the center of gravity is lifted so much higher from the fulcrum of the fluid head. And then the mirror that I'm installing here is fixed angle, whereas the new model, you can articulate it up and down. That's important for wide shots, like head to toe shots. When I tilt the camera down, it actually chops off almost the top half of the screen. So the person scrolling, the prompter op has to scroll text and basically only utilize the bottom half for like head to toe shots. Like I said, the new model solves that. And then there's also a trapezoidal version. I have problems like if I have a head to toe shot and let's say the subject is head toe frame right, then they're losing the top half of the screen and like the left third. And so a trapezoidal screen allows you to have your subject that's reading. They can be positioned at the edge of frame and still see the full width of the text. But again, mine are for field use, and most of the time I'm just shooting a close-up or like a waist-up. So serves the purpose 90% of the time. All right, this is the Amazon Special. I can't remember if this came with a monitor, but regardless, I ended up buying a different panel that's a 10-inch. I don't even recall the brand, but also an inexpensive Amazon unit. But the one I bought has a BNC connector for standard definition analog composite video, same as how I run my big prompters. So this goes together the same as my Q Gear unit. The prompter frame sandwiches between the Sackler tripod plate and the VCT 14, and I modified this Amazon unit to accept a second screw. It only came with a single one, so the camera will loosen itself up and auto pan on you. So this is only my second time putting this together, and it's been over a year. With the shoulder pad and VCT 14 plate, the lens is too high. You can see here it's like halfway off the top of the mirror. So I got to strip off the bottom plate. I think that's a Movcam shoulder pad. And then I was just direct bolted to the prompter frame, and then discovered it's actually a little too low. Once I put the hood on, the fabric on the bottom of the hood was in frame, bottom of the lens. So I'm going to switch to a dovetail and just no rods, just the low profile wooden camera bridge. And that seems to land the lens perfectly centered vertically. And yeah, I see this mirror is filthy. I'll get that cleaned up on the day. I'm going to have one of our cam ops deal with that, actually. They'll figure it out when they put it together. So you can see how flimsy the like thin gauge metal of the prompter frame. So I'm looking for a different dovetail. The one that's on there now, you can only use 1/4 inch tie downs on this prompter frame, and that dovetail only had 1/4 inch in the center area. So I got this other 12 inch that's tapped front to back with 3/8 and 1/4. That should get rid of a bunch of that flexiness. And then my card here and the camera rolled out, but I actually added a dovetail to the bottom as well, a second dovetail, because I had to slide the entire contraption forward on the fluid head Once I added a battery to the camera, it was extremely back heavy. I couldn't get it to balance out, but with a 12-inch dovetail on the bottom as well as the top, it all worked out. And at that point, once you factor in the cost of all that wooden camera hardware, I think it tallies up to be worth cost more than just buying another Q Gear frame. But I didn't have to buy or ship anything. I'm able to work with everything I got here on site. So we'll make it happen. It's going to be interesting. I actually burned more time today setting this stuff up than the full duration from call time to tail lights on our actual shoot day, which means it's very important that I actually did this, because had I just thrown cases in the truck and attempted to build all of this on the day, even with 3 additional people on the crew, I'm not confident we would have pulled it off on time. I think we would have failed. So it's good I put the day in. So paid to have a little time off. And man, it's so crazy. You take a couple weeks off and I just fumble around. I don't shoot for a week and I start losing my edge. Well, this one's long enough, and I ran out of daylight today, but tomorrow I'm going to figure out my audio side. I'm going to be using my kit for that as well. And I also got to figure out the lighting. Lighting should be pretty simple. I'm going to get it done with 4 lights, but we'll cover that in the next video.